"You want a wife or just shelter?" An Apache widow inquired after he rejected all the women. Ethan Cole was a man of silence. The cowboy who had everything a lady could want was well known in the frontier communities. Quiet eyes, broad shoulders, and a voice capable of soothing a scared horse. But he was untamable. He lived alone on the outside of the territory, mending fences, trading cattle, and keeping his heart locked tighter than the rifle on his hip. Ever since the war ended and the dust settled over his shattered past, people in the town gossiped about him, saying that even the preacher's daughter was unable to get past his wall, and that he rejected any woman who offered him company. Ethan had discovered that in a world based on loss, love was a luxury that no man could afford. As he rode along the canyon route one late summer evening, a cloud of smoke ascended over the horizon. It was not the type of smoke produced by campfires. It was the brutal black of burning houses. The horse's hooves pounded the dry ground as he galloped more quickly, and what he saw when he arrived in the clearing made him feel empty inside. The earth was still heated from gunfire after a small Apache encampment was attacked. A mother stood amid the rubble, her arms encircling two little children in a protective manner, her face smeared with ash. She refrained from crying. She refrained from screaming. She just stood there, bowed yet unbroken, like a lone cedar after a storm. Ethan got off his horse and slowly walked over. "You need help?" Her eyes, as piercing as obsidian, met his without fear as he requested in a hushed voice. "I need a shovel," she murmured. They buried the dead together, including her husband, after he gave her one from his saddlebag. Until the sun disappeared below the hills, nobody said anything. The woman turned to face him as night fell and remarked, "You ride alone. When no one is waiting, that is simple." He remained silent. Rather, he used what food he had to build a small fire for her and the kids. She nodded in agreement while maintaining her distance. Later on, he discovered that her name was Ayana. She was a widow who was torn between two civilizations that rejected her. She was part Apache and half settler. Ethan saddled his horse and got ready to go the following morning. But he was stopped by Ayana. She remarked, "You came when no one else did. The men who come after you won't be nice if you leave now." She wasn't begging. It was an assertion of reality. Ethan glanced at the youngster, pretending to be courageous while brandishing a stick like a rifle, and the little girl clinging to her mother's clothing. He let out a sigh as he felt the old ache in his chest that he believed had long since passed away. He said, "I'll take you to my place at last. You can stay till you figure what's next." That's how it started. They coexisted together on Ethan's ranch for several weeks. Ayana labored in the corral, keeping the fire and preparing meals from sunrise to sunset. She never begged for favors, grumbled, or looked for sympathy. Ethan silently observed her with reverence. He saw the mirror of his own loneliness in her stillness, as she carried herself with the dignity that comes from suffering. Lily and Toma, the kids, gradually brought life and laughter into the quiet space between them. But the town started talking as the days became shorter. Ayana was referred to by some as a curse, and by others as a man's heart thief. Men mocked Ethan and questioned whether he had softened when he went to town for supplies. He disregarded them all until one evening, when a ranch worker mistreated her by calling her a word that was too hurtful to utter. Before the man could continue speaking, Ethan's fist struck, causing blood to pour. Ethan was already back home, pacing outside the cabin with his hands still shaking, when the sheriff showed up. Ayana emerged silently, her expression serene in the moonlight. She said, "You didn't have to fight for me." "I didn't," he answered. "They don't know the truth, which is why I battled." "What is the truth about that?" she inquired. He answered simply, "You're stronger than all of us." She gave a little but genuine smile for the first time. She discovered him mending the fence line the following morning. "You turn down every woman who crosses your path," she said, after observing for a considerable amount of time. "Why am I allowed to remain?" Ethan raised his head to meet her gaze. "Since you didn't ask to." As the days turned into autumn, Something unsaid developed in the silence, even if they didn't exchange loving words. Ethan noticed how the light struck her hair, watched her hands at work, and listened for her voice. Ayanna witnessed his concern for her kids, teaching Lily to laugh once more and Toma to ride. However, she also witnessed his fear, the type that prevents a man from ever reaching out. He was sitting on the porch, gazing off into the distance, when she went outside one evening while a storm was building. It was the kind of thick air that carried more than rain. "You want a wife or just shelter?"
she asked as she sat next to him.
Her query lingered like thunder between them. Ethan turned to look directly into her eyes. "I don't know if I remember how to want anything anymore." A melancholy smile curved Ayanna's lips. "Then maybe it's time you remember." Ethan felt alive for the first time in years as lightning struck across the plains. However, neither of them anticipated that the past they had both buried was going to resurface. The ghosts of Ethan's past appeared with the storm that night. At the boundary of his property, a group of bounty riders emerged. Their words were colder than the wind, and their faces were harsh. They were pursuing Ayanna, not Ethan. They demanded that she be turned over, accusing her tribe of supporting raids against settlements. "She's not going anywhere," Ethan declared as he stood on the porch with his rifle in hand and the rain pouring over his hat brim. In the mud, the leader spat. "You willing to die for her, cowboy?" Ethan remained still. "I already have." Chaos ensued. The crack of bullets, the roar of hooves. The shouts were drowned out by the storm's roar. Ethan battled like a man possessed, motivated by something much more profound than rage. Refusing to stay hidden, Ayanna took her husband's old bow and entered the battle. Even in the downpour, her aim remained firm. The earth was sticky with water and blood when silence finally descended, and only the wind dared to move. Wounded but still alive, Ethan collapsed to his knees. Ayanna rushed over to him and put her hands on his side. "You fool," she said. "You should have let me go." He grimaced, half smiling. "You inquired as to whether I desired a spouse or merely a place to live. I now have the solution." With tears blending with the rain, she gazed at him. He said, "And I want both, if you are the one." She remained silent for a considerable amount of time. She then pressed her forehead against his as she leaned forward. The sky seemed to breathe a sigh of relief as the storm subsided. The threat had passed by daybreak, and Ethan's injuries had been healed. The kids slept securely within. Ayanna watched the light emerge from the clouds as she stood outside the cabin, and she had hope for the first time in years. Months passed after weeks. The rumors subsided, the land recovered, and life regained its rhythm. Toma learned how to operate the ranch from Ethan, who also renovated the fence. In remembrance of what was lost but never forgotten, Ayanna planted wildflowers close to her people's graves. When the light on the prairie turned gold one evening, Ethan approached her and gave her a tiny turquoise ring that he had crafted. He responded to her, "You once said you didn't need saving, and you were correct. Instead, you saved me." She glanced first at the ring and then at him. "Cowboy, are you sure about this?" He gave a nod. "Ever since you asked me that question, I've been certain." Grinning, she put the ring on her finger. "Then perhaps it's time for us to start living instead of just surviving." So they did. Lost ties two souls together. The silent power of love and fire. The man who once rejected every woman. I've finally discovered someone who didn't beg for his heart. All she did was remind him that he still had one. Their laughter was carried into the distance by the prairie wind. A reminder that sometimes the quiet bravery of someone who doesn't give up on anything can soften the hardest hearts rather than passion.